Namkadanyam Bisimjitam Jitun, the and the Ladame by Antopolos of Sanji from Honor, to Russia. Dimship the Tabuchukon of Sandy, Konyam Son Review, Yam by Shanchim to Kibal, Chitin William San Pressure.
So please begin by giving rise to the highest intention and motivation of bodhicitta, great compassion that feels, I shall listen to this teaching and shall practice it accordingly in order to place all sentient beings whose numbers are as vast and infinite as space itself into the state of everlasting happiness, the unsurpassable, authentic and genuine state of perfect and complete awakening, perfect Buddhahood. And for that I shall listen to the teaching and accomplish it with this kind of altruistic motivation. Please attend to the teachings.
Gyatrul Rinpoche, Parts of Pinica, Gonzo Panica, Odoncho Panica, Tastan, so it is nutrition in this. Ninjusha Nipanda and Nambi Chula, the single Kanga, Savi Tashi. I think I will go to a catch and Nishakins.
So, guess we better get to it and start the actual teaching. There's not much to the teaching, it's just two major points or sections to cover. The first, of course, is just sharing with you the signs and the display of miracles that we have encountered during the extraordinary time of the Parinirvana passing of the Lord of Refuge, His Holiness Gyatrul Rinpoche, who, as you know, displayed many miracles and signs of great accomplishment during the period of his transitioning into the Parinirvana. And so we'll talk about some of these signs and displays of miracles. And then the second topic is going to be just some words about how do we rely on the pure Dharma to heal our mind and of all that troubles it, all of its troubles and hardships. And so, as you know, this year we have all been through a tremendous pain of heart, a tremendous grievance, because we have all experienced the pain of seeing our precious Lama Gyatrul Rinpoche display the appearance of dissolving his awakened mind into the state of basic space. And so we have all experienced a great sort of pain in our hearts to see the passing of our Lama. But this too is another expression of our Root Lama's supreme kindness, giving us a great teaching. This too is like the most profound teaching to remind us of the nature of all conditioned existence as impermanent. And so even the passing of our Lama is a teaching in and of itself, a very profound teaching and instruction for us. And so this is something that, you know, just talking about what it means, we use the word Gompa Dzogpa to the honorific for Parinirvana, the passing of the Lama, which literally translates as the when the enlightened intent comes to its full expression, the passing of a great master. master. But what is this? What does it really mean? We all have some understanding of this because even during the time of Lord Buddha, when Lord Buddha, we say the expression displayed the appearance of passing into Parinirvana. Because it is for, again, the benefit of the followers of Buddha, that Buddha taught in this final teaching that all phenomena is impermanent, that everything is impermanent and subject to change. And that becomes itself a great teaching and an antidote to our tendency to be in constant denial of our own mortality, constantly thinking, oh, I have plenty of time, I'm not going to die anytime soon, and just kind of living in this sort of denial-like state where we grasp onto our experience and existence as being very permanent and lasting, and never thinking like, well, one day I too will have to pass from this life. We're almost like unable to really bring ourselves to think about that. And so this is yet another reminder and precious teaching of Buddha, of the awakened ones, to remind us to take seriously the reality of impermanence and to think about that which we normally cannot even bear to speak of.
And then the Yanson the Thompson shown you Sanji Kong not on a Muslim in a moment of time is. After the date of Tanjana, not so beyond you. Or Tangas on the Machana, Mongo, no Mongo, a Chunian in Chigora, a Chunian in Chibatilla on to tin this time island. That Tipsima wine, Tipsima Samson wine, that tin the line, and then I was Thompson Motion, you some Jerome like Hotam Yuji, Rangi sing no one to the Yokoin Sanji stitches in the and the Kongo in the National time is.
One of the reasons why during the passing of our root Lama, his display of the Parinirvana, why the Lama even displays these miracles and these signs of accomplishment is, again, to remind us, it's sort of like another reminder and inspiration of the power of the Dharma, that we think to ourselves, wow, if we too follow the words of Buddha, the Buddha Dharma, and we practice this and we rely on this, then these kind of incredible, genuine signs of realization, we too can actually realize this. And it's something very inspiring, it's something very encouraging for us. For many of us, many of you have been Dharma practitioners for so many years, and it's kind of like a sort of inspiration, encouragement, giving you more confidence that, wow, if I keep practicing Dharma, like, I don't even have to wait till the next life to see the effects and to see the signs of my practice and the benefit of the Dharma, because I see these examples of great beings where this actually can be accomplished in this very lifetime, even before I have left this body and left this lifetime. So it's very inspiring, it brings confidence. And for example, we see many of these masters who their display of miracles at the time of the passing defies even science. Science has no explanation.
Gyatrul Rinpoche Gongbar Zomen de Kamna, Takungo Donchuk, Shali Leka Lincoln, Nango Zo Nango Signaris, in the day, Lord Tama, the Naran Zipsali Sama Hako use, and then the Chans on a liability.
And during the Parinirvana time of His Holiness Gyatrul Rinpoche, I was one of the principal workers that were working kind of around the clock to prepare for the, the dumcha, the ceremony and the passing of the holy remains and such. And so I was there all the time witnessing all of this for myself and had very close contact. And so I'm really speaking from direct experience, and so I have quite a bit to share.
아마도 난진난 가서 특담나 지금 농담 많이 받기서 하고 말이나 특담 주나야 되다 큰 이시 다큰 저거 특구 이시데 따로 스컬리나 완전히 되는 다이어트라 특담나 그랬어.
So, first of all, after Gyatrul Rinpoche passed into the Parinirvana state, 2 days later he entered what we call Tukdam. So Tukdam means where the Lama goes into a sort of samadhi-like absorption state. And for those who are not Buddhist, it might seem kind of a novel idea. What we would sort of say is it's like the Lama, basically how we explain Tukdam, where the Lama is sort of technically already passed but still present in a state of samadhi. And that is explained as the Lama has not unfurled yet, has not dissolved or released the absorption within the primordial awareness of his awakened mind or her awakened mind. So the Lama is in that state of presence of mind, in that wisdom awareness still.
Tene tukdam zhula de tama zu zoba chimbo gu chu nyamlin chini dagar zochin de rumrum chut tila nyamlin chik chandan ziyong kayina chatang damba yona tukdam zik tu yama po jamba rongtong su tukdam zik tu yoma es.
But again, this tukdam, as we call it in Tibetan, this abiding in samadhi, that's something that only those who have practiced the Dzogpa Chenpo great perfection and who have had a glimpse or an introduction into the nature of their own awareness, their rikpa, their pure awareness through the Dzogchen transmissions and such, that individual then, when they pass, they can enter into what's called the Tukdam stage, the abiding in samadhi. But ordinary people that have no prior contact or understanding of this, they don't just usually stay in Tukdam like that. So during the 2 days that Gyatrul Rinpoche was abiding in the Tukdam, in the Samadhi meditation, his countenance, his face was as supple and fresh and vibrant as if he were right there with us alive. It's not like what you think of like a normal person passing away. As soon as they are what we would say legally pronounced dead, their face, the color goes away and the face changes, the quality of the skin changes to reflect the dying or the death state. But Gyatrul Rinpoche's face just didn't even change, complexion still sort of bright and rosy as he's alive. And also the heat underneath his arms hadn't dissolved or dissipated either, the body heat.
That is. Tinita, Tukdam Juni, Tanatu, and a book on the Lama Chimbo, so Gumbar Zone, the Doston Ravages on it, Tukdam the Juni, the Yeron Jomoda, Don Sachi is.
Awesome. So traditionally, we keep watch to when the Lama is ready to, as you would call it, like come to from this absorption state of Tukdam, of Samadhi. And when great Lamas like this arise out of the Samadhi, the benefit of the beings we do, when they're abiding for a long time to kind of preserve, we do what's called the Dunsa. We collect the salts from the sacred body remains.
Tinida, Tukdam Labjipin de Kamata, Congo Lama Satansin now, Tukdam Labjipin de Kam, Congo Scopundi, Jamataya, the Jingo Alastan, the Yomaris. You know, Tukdam the roots had that's what Rosen the Golden Chamber, the Rin, the Rik, and that's just how Rogres, the Katamas, the point of Magenta.
Because traditionally, so for as long as the Lama is abiding in that absorption state, which we call Tukdam Samadhi, then the body doesn't give off any kind of smell of like the death or the corpse and stays fresh. But then usually once the Lama awakens from that Samadhi absorption, that's when the body begins to start to decompose as a normal corpse would do, and that's why we have to kind of work fast to preserve it before it begins to start to display that effect. So
특담식이 다 맞춰 청나가 특담식 그래서 말이다. 아마 내가 먼저 특담식 지도다. 맞춰라 지시라 연상이 말이 청마된 날이다. 이나 엄마 장관은 연상이야. 근데 연상 동보식들이 특담식이 돼서 연상 잘했어. 그럼
Okay, so the first amazing thing, well, I was going to say we don't really even make a big deal too much about a Lama going into Tukdam, into Samadhi, because it's kind of like, well, yeah, we expect the Lama to do this, go into Tukdam. But then, come to think of it, it is kind of amazing in and of itself, just the fact that there's a being that is going into this Samadhi state after death, that Tukdam is itself the first incredible, awesome display. That's the first thing.
It is. Then Tukdam le thru charni, Rinpoche Tukdam le thru charni, then you must nima karigo. Gomba Tukdam thru ne nima stigla so, nima stigla, stigla sekhan already. Then I told Tumsan ji abu murkozi, then I got Lama Sona Rinpoche, I got to Tonanyam the Kachas and I Sa in the Bogum to Karis that Jama Kaya and the Sa in the Mutu, then you don't sound it to the Sa the Geo Maris.
So then when Gyatrul Rinpoche displayed the signs that he's coming out of the Tukdam, now that's traditionally when we are ready to do the embalming and what we call the dumtsa, where you salt the body for preservation purposes. And it was about 1 day, maybe 1.5 days after Rinpoche had already come out of the Samadhi, the Tukdam. And we were kind of wondering, like Lama Sonam Rinpoche was there too helping, and we were talking and we were wondering, like, well, when do we want to start doing this preservation, the dumtsa, the salting? But we didn't need to because the body wasn't rotting or smelling or anything. So we didn't even have to do the traditional process of preserving the body because it wasn't giving off any kind of smell or signs of decay.
And
that's how we were able to have the time that we could actually take the sacred mortal remains all the way up to Trashechele.
Rinpoche da kuma namsa toya so ne kata tsama ngara ko musa papa khide na che ore dangi kare na da chi ko namsa so ko ta mutum da sam ngara ko tenda chi sem na ta inda ngara so Rinpoche ga namsa so pide lapa tsama na so sombo no jin tsama mara chula to ka ro ma ko jom jamba shi so ne chopo chang tenda sa ni man so so na halba yan chen zer chi so.
So then, of course, we have to prepare the body one way or the other. We have to get it dressed up, and, we would dress the body like you would do when you're taking it for further movement and ceremony. And so normally when a person has died, the body becomes very stiff. It enters rigor mortis, and it becomes very stiff because it's no longer has the circulation flow. But now keep in mind at this point 4 days had already passed since Rinpoche had passed. And so I was the one, of course, that was going to be, clothing the body and everything. And in my mind, the thought arose that how am I going to do this? Is it going to be hard to kind of get the clothes on his body if they're very stiff and hard? But when I went to go and clothe Rinpoche, the body was as if alive, very loose, the limbs moved easily, very mobile, very soft, and just very easy, as if just like a regular body there with us. There was no stiffness, there was no rigidity at all. It was very loose. So that's another amazing sign that I saw. It was like someone that's just fallen asleep, somebody that's just there alive with you, they're just asleep or unconscious. That's what it was like. Actually, Rinpoche didn't say the word unconscious. That's translator's bad translation choice. Rinpoche said the word asleep, so cut unconscious. So it was just like somebody that had fallen asleep and just moving their body.
Trashechungla yara danjejini, dini trashechungla chong matong konda. Andana matsundana mimi yore, skat yore, dani matong mampoch yore, nyamtanga sogo yara danjejini rukiti. 근데 다시 지금 마통 공한테 파킹 나지요. 근데 마토다 모자데 카톡나 디즈 겐 테네 테나지 거리지. 근데 요 다시 좀 돈소매는 지금 이송하나 문나 소망 동도 내진지 거라. 근데 카톡 안도 기다려. 겐 거지. 근데 마토드네 나라디 파킹나 통정의 송디 난카라 니마샤라는 냠도 카와 그 메토드다 봤었지.
Meto.
Kawa meto, kawa Dharma Gyatrul Dharma
And so then we traveled with the sacred Kudung, the precious body, and we took it off to Drashichali. And at the time we got there to the parking lot where the students were waiting in a procession with the Prabhupada. Before we got there, they were waiting at the parking lot, but we hadn't quite gotten there yet. Mimi, Scott, a lot of people were there to, bring the body up and welcome it. And then at the time, even before we got to the parking lot where everybody was waiting with the katas and respect to receive the sacred remains, then from the sky, with the sun, it was sunny, but from the sky, these flowers of snowflakes, these 8, So it was 6-petaled and 8-petaled flowers of snow, just flakes of snow descending. And I had caught some in my hand and counted 6 petals and 8 petals like that. Mimi remembers. I don't remember the name of the
exit. So first we stopped at the entrance of the Holstein Valley to prepare the van, decorate with katas. So then we would proceed to the temple. So we stopped first entering the valley where the temple is, and then we witnessed this beautiful snow flowers.
Wow. Did everybody hear?
No.
So they stopped at the Holstein Valley, is that right?
That's the entrance to the Holstein
The entrance to the Holstein Valley, and they were preparing the van with the katas and everything, and the sacred scarves. And that was when they saw the snow flowers and such coming from the sky. What was the other name you gave? Hilt?
Hilt is the name of the exit.
Oh, that's so
You're most familiar, that's the first way. When you first get off the freeway to go to Kashichin, that's where you stop.
Wow, okay, so that's the ending of the exit where they pulled out. Oh, it was a parking lot of a liquor store. 네, 켜버려.
네, 카와기 첩반이야 우리. 아마도 카와기 첩반은 땅기 첩반이요야. 땅기 첩반이 뭐예요, 말아? 나 카와기 첩반은 어서 옆으로 팀을 옆으로 잡지. 팀을 잡지.
And then, once we got the Gyatrul Rinpoche to the Drashichali, and then you have the Gyaling and the Romo and everybody's, welcoming the Gyatrul Rinpoche. And at that time, then from the sky came this gentle sort of snow rain. There's 2 types of snow rain. One's what we would call hail, which is not very good, but the other type of snow rain, kunjum, it's considered very auspicious, interdependence. So basically, we were already seeing all these incredibly amazing signs. Then we had that sort of auspicious type of gentle snow rain falling, and so many auspicious signs like that. So we stayed there in Drashichali doing 3 days of ceremonies, and during those 3 days, There was no smell, no signs of decay coming whatsoever. It was like only a nice smell coming, but no smelling like, and we didn't do any kind of preservation, not even ice, just left it in its natural state. And it didn't smell, it was all that, those 3 days just natural and no bad smell, only good smell coming. Of course, Doshi chilling at that time was a little cold, but outside cold, inside was quite warm because we had the heater going. And still, no signs of decay or smell, anything like that. Then after 3 days at Doshi chilling, we again brought the Gyatrul Rinpoche back to Urgyen Dorje Den here. And so then we continued to do the ceremonies, 10 days, 15 days, altogether the Gyatrul Rinpoche was there in its natural state without any form of preservation, 23 days already. And I don't even think there's even any historical precedent for this kind of thing. 23 days of the body being completely not a single bad smell or sign of decay and no act to preserve it whatsoever. And of course, there were many other auspicious signs that accompanied the whole experience, like just from the transporting the Gyatrul Rinpoche body, the sacred body, all the way back from Dashi Choling to Urgyen Dorje Den. During that whole process, there were rainbows, there were all kinds of auspicious signs. So many, it just became almost like just regular for us, just auspicious signs everywhere. But we didn't do anything, any kind of act of preservation whatsoever throughout all of this. The sacred remains of Rinpoche, from the transport to Dashi Choling, from Urgyen Dorje Den, from Dashi Choling back to Urgyen Dorje Den, all the pujas and ceremonies and all that time passed, 23 days, not a single, we didn't do anything to preserve the body, and it didn't decay, it didn't smell or anything like that.
freezer dan changam yora freezer na mamso changam na zona nima chikhan tama khan ro tenda inde music johnson tenda jaide ha yam sambares.
And so that was the kind of Rinpoche's incredible display and blessings, like not a single bit of sign of decay, of smell, anything like that. Stayed fresh and vital all that time, 23 days. And you could say that's Rinpoche's way of showing us this is the blessing of the Dharma, this is the fruit, the sign of the practice, Dharma practice. And it's something like you couldn't even make sense out of from a rational sort of scientific perspective. Because even from the perspective of science, just like meat, right? Flesh, meat. Even you take flesh, you take meat, you put it in the refrigerator, in the freezer, even when it's in a colder environment like a freezer, it still goes bad after, 10 days? It's still not going to be fresh like that. So thinking like doing nothing at all to the body, and it retains its sort of qualities, doesn't have any smell or decay whatsoever, is incredible, it's amazing.
근데 또 치수들이 사람도 생겨.
So to talk about like the signs of Rinpoche's display of his miracles from passing into Parinirvana, I would say this is the greatest of all of them.
Parinirvana. Then niman is saksane then ngaso taga kauntarina Rinpoche's kodong hirong pola saya kan chasu sabe then ngaso karina odongcha de jigin ngaso odongcha jigis man is saksane ngode.
And then after 23 days, we kind of just thought, well, we want to make sure no matter what that Rinpoche's mortal remains stay with us for a long time. So we just went ahead and did the salting at that point after 23 days with the intention that either way we're just going to ensure that we're preserving this body. So, but that was kind of how we thought about it.
근데 나도 Rinpoche's kodong desa lene then ngaso dongcha jiang chausi jidi 다른 거 지금 나산데가 이런 거 지금 좀 지대요라 코박스도 되라 그것은 그 녹들상 이제 이제 만들었어 이 말에는 뭐 그래 그것도 그것도 돼
And so then we went, you know, to when we were unclothing Rinpoche, and we unclothed Rinpoche's gudung, and we see the body there, and the chest and the upper body, the torso, had not lost its color, its luster. It was still like as if black, like it didn't lose its color at all. And around the heart area, the chest area, when we were removing the clothes, we saw there was a sweat, beads of sweat at the chest area. Like when you were running and you exert yourself. Sweat. Think about that, like after displaying the passing and then 23 days, just leaving it here untouched, dry, and then where's the spontaneous moisture coming from? That too is amazing. And even after the 23 days when we were, you know, salted the body and everything, it was like the body still remained very supple and very like malleable, like kind of like a person just there with us asleep, and they let you move their arms however you want, but they're still kind of like movable and mobile and soft and pliant. And that's what Rinpoche's body remains like. And so we, of course, following the Tibetan tradition, when the Lama passes away, we preserve the Lama's gudung, the sacred mortal remains, with the salts. We do the salting of the body. Of course, that harkens back to a time before we had other means of preservation that we may have now. So we just continue on with that Tibetan culture and tradition of using the salts to preserve the body, and so we kept it for 55 days, something like that. Most likely around that number of days. There are so many stories and anecdotes of the incredible miracles and signs of accomplishment that Rinpoche displayed. Of course, time would never be enough to extol all of these incredible signs. So we'll suffice it with these just as a sort of summary synopsis, but they are by no means exhaustive. And as another expression of the inconceivable qualities of Rinpoche's enlightened activities, of his enlightened contribution to the benefit of sentient beings, of his awakened mind's immeasurable compassion, and of the force of his prayers of aspiration, our final offering was to take the mortal remains and offer it into the ocean as per the final instructions Rinpoche gave us. And so the great bodhisattvas, the awakened ones, their compassion and their aspiration prayers to benefit the sentient beings are inconceivable. They are beyond our ability to fathom, and certainly beyond our ability to articulate in words the incredible, inconceivable scope and power of the enlightened activities and compassion and prayers of the great bodhisattvas. For example, even just all the new diseases and epidemics that are pervading the earth, a lot of times these can be alleviated through appeasing the nagas, for example, the sort of serpent being spirits called the nagas. And so even like as an offering to the nagas, and similarly, so the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, for example, as an expression of their enlightened activities, will often manifest in ways to benefit the countless sentient beings, like, for example, going into the ocean and so forth. And so, again, this is just another expression of the inconceivable compassion and enlightened aspirations of Rinpoche. And so let that suffice as sort of just a kind of quick rendition of some of the amazing signs of accomplishment and miracles that we experienced during the preparation during the Parinirvana of Rinpoche. So now I want to turn to something else, which is to share with you that I had a dream early in the morning this morning. Yesterday morning, early in the morning at 5 a.m. of Gyatrul Rinpoche. Of course, I've had many dreams since Gyatrul Rinpoche's passing, where Gyatrul Rinpoche visits me in the dreams. In this particular dream at 5 a.m., I saw Rinpoche, and one of the things that I'll share with you from the dream, I won't share every detail of the dream, but one thing that was very clear is Rinpoche said to me, when you teach them, tell the students to all recite one mala round, 108, one mala round of the 100-syllable mantra, Vajrasattva. So whether you believe or not believe, of course it's my dream, but anyway, I feel guided to share that note with you about it should be of benefit, the purification mantra of Vajrasattva.
고초나 입자 살자 동제톤 음조같은 랍스박스는
And Rinpoche also in the dream, he was kind of saying like, tell them to quickly, tell them they have to do 108 of the Vajra 100-syllable mantra quickly. Tell them to just recite quickly. So that was my dream. And I thought it was interesting, that was my dream. I thought it was kind of interesting because of the timing of it, because I knew that like today I was going to be giving a meeting, seeing you and talking to you. And Rinpoche came the night before in that dream and told me this, so I thought, well, it's probably good to share that with you anyway. And you can share with other students of Gyatrul Rinpoche, your Sangha, if you feel so inclined. It's your discretion, of course, but you don't have to. But if you want to share that, impart that advice to your Vajra siblings, Dharma family, you can. Oh, somebody have a question?
Yes, quickly meaning fast or right away?
Yeah, thank you. Rinpoche says like quickly, like do it quickly, not recite it very fast. Thank you.
Okay.
Can you clarify a little bit of the time of Tukdam and then, because it sounded like just a couple of days, and yet the Rinpoche's Kudam didn't decay for 3 weeks. So was there a transition from Tukdam to some other state, and what is that state considered?
There's many signs that we look for to indicate the point at which the Lama has sort of risen from the Tukdam, which we would call like the samadhi state of absorption. But the main thing is we look at there's a change in the face and the countenance, the color of the face, and also like the body. There's a certain dissipation of heat in the armpits. Those are like, and then the face change a little bit. Those are usually what we look for as indications, but they're there are ways we can tell when the Lama has sort of awakened or left the samadhi state. And that's usually the point at which we hustle to try and do the preservation practices. I honestly don't have an answer for you as to like what, how to explain that. Again, that's another expression of the inconceivable, amazing science, because how is it that he did arise from the samadhi, but still no smelling, no signs of decay, anything for that time? I have no explanation for it either. I can't tell you where he was or what his state was at that time, but it was definitely incredible.
천종이나 파티를 본 것도 아직 다 맞춰 쭉 비슷하잖아. 맞춰 다去年人今年这把头비슷하세요. 쭉 비슷한 경우인 사례 상황인데 그래서 이나 띠내감나 콘거 이제 선거나는 특가를 주고는 또 선거 한국에서 이나 쭉 비슷한데 인샤샤했어.
One thing I can say, just a guess, like just my own kind of guess about it, is that it's some sort of what we would call a drupta, a sign of accomplishment, a siddhi, a displaying of the siddhi of accomplishment through, we say drupta means like it's a sign that shows of your mastery, your accomplishment of siddhis from practice. But what exactly the Rinpoche's awakened mind was doing at that time, or the nature of the state, I couldn't possibly explain, but I know it's some sort of a sign of siddhi of accomplishment. So that should wrap up the first part of the teaching on the Parinirvana of Rinpoche. So now I want to get into the next topic, which is how, through reliance on the Buddha Dharma, do we work through and overcome the hardships that our minds face. We see a lot of development on the outer plane. For example, in the material world, we see that the universe seems to be on a sort of rapid incline of development. Technological development and advancement of the material world, and advancement of the sort of abundance of phenomenon. We're seeing a lot of movement forward and advancement in the outer world right now. Even like the medical sciences have displayed tremendous advancement of late. The tools and the methodologies, the instrumentation of medical science has gone through tremendous development and advancement. But at the same time, almost like proportional to this advancement is the sort of devolution or the sort of degeneration of the state of our minds, of the inner minds, the emotional state, the psychological well-being seems to be continuously diminishing, and the troubles and suffering, mental health, and all of this seems to be at crisis point. For example, we're seeing a rise in depression and anxiety and so forth among the human race.
Mati sola simla certong sana kabungdo. Certong yang jemong rugu yore, ini de sim control yang jeci rugu yore jemong na rugu du, ini tong certong sim certong real na complex lengkap, real ni bagi certong dendo, ini dengar jemong membujuk dah jemong lah dah zaman kasa kawan dengar jemong rugu du sih.
For example, like the human mind is experiencing higher levels of stress and anxiety, higher levels of anger and frustration, depression, stress, this feeling of like being discouraged and feeling hopeless, despondent, all of this is increasing everywhere around the world in the human mind.
근데 다 ndasona ngazo nomba chula tinni 다 판독 특별히 더 말이 라면 nomba chulong나요. ndasona 판독 그 답시 공부지 요리스.
And so if you're wondering whether there's some benefit or help that can be found in the Buddha Dharma, the answer is yes. The Buddha Dharma has numerous antidotes to these troubles and afflictions of mind.
And that is, then the tabship yung temperature balan tanga soyong jirong sosu gutong bos tabship jing 다 점직다 되는 mongo지 jir고 그래서 또 완전한 영화 조직 간다지 판교는 탑 판비 탑집에서 나서 시고 말했어.
But of course, in order to avail ourselves of these methods, we have to study them and learn them and understand them, because without examining for our own selves what these methods are and how to utilize them, then we won't be able to benefit ourselves. So it starts with really looking into these methods and understanding them.
Tenita galeri tenata tongkong ngaco kangasang tonggo jadi tang ngaco sure ko ngubotong wanjur ndetsoga ngaco nang sem deva tang sem chipi thala phaka areda mari ngaco tala stopse chego dus.
So the first sort of examination we need to engage in is to just ask ourselves and examine for ourselves whether all this outer material wealth and, material things, money and glory and all of this sort of material wealth in the world, whether that itself is actually benefiting our minds. Can it benefit the mind? Can it bring us happiness?
난 늦어나 또나 판독디서 요즘 그랬어. 이나 자찬장 무슨 판독 특별 말이지. 심대와는 늦어 자찬장 사람들의 판독 특별 말이지.
Of course, they seem to bring us some benefit, of course, but they can't 100% benefit our minds and bring us happiness. Certainly can't bring us 100% guarantee happiness.
대판 메토야 가지고 다 로르지라식 때나 내가서 하고 있었어. 원래 로르지자 때나 가지고 루 니시 성취봉 못해서는 당선 못해서나 가지고 스탑스지잖아. 루 니시 성취봉 못해서 환절동 실로고 농집대당 당선 근무가 실로고 환절동 농집대라식 때는 단 잔저 동지가 당선 점리요리 예표레스. 근데 루 니시 성취봉 못해서 sempre 찍는지라 상도도 당선 때단 영 잔저 동지가 당선 근무가 sempre 쉽게 보용요 말이지.
And we can kind of understand the limitations of the material world and all the, technological ease and material wealth and benefits, how that really has a limit. It can't really bring us happiness. We can understand that if we look historically at, for example, people that came even 20, 30 years before us, and how much our technologies have advanced and made things more, easy and convenient and so forth. And we have so much more in the level of material accomplishment, material wealth, than even people 20, 30 years before us, and 100 times, 1,000 times more advanced, more easy and beneficial. But at the same time, if we look at the state of the minds of the people of the current generation versus the people just 20, 30 years before, that same percentage, that 100 times, 1,000 times more afflicted are the present state of our minds and our mental health.
다 쓰는 거라고 다 지금 정도나 마스터니 시행은 된다 쳐요.
And so, how is this the case? Well, this all comes from placing all of our mind's hope and reliance entirely on the external and entirely on the outer things and outer external things like the material world. And we are not therefore focusing our attention on bettering our own state of mind, not really taking care of our own mental health or our state of mind, the inner mind, not protecting it, not looking after it, not examining it, not trying to work with our minds and improve and better our minds because we are entirely focused outward, trying to derive all of our happiness from external things. That's one of the causes.
이제 나서 즈포금 트로틴라 정말 그 자주 제기요니다 심금 트로틴라 자주 제기요 말했어.
Everybody is so careful and cautious about keeping up the health of the body, like the physical fitness, for example. But we're not at all concerned with the fitness of our minds.
Tening also zupola trusting je azada je nam jinsi also sim na yo tena je jetun also shiu zupo da nang sim chona dewo chata es.
And we were to put even just some of the effort and energy that we focus on our, physical body's health and well-being into the health and well-being and fitness of our minds and our mental health state, we would just be that much more stable and well-rounded and balanced people. Actually, when Lord Buddha turned the wheel and taught the Dharma, the principal objective was teaching mental health, or the health of the mind.
내가 뒤쪽 통통한 생기 탑당 뒤쪽 롱보동 지와 몽보동 내가 흑단지 디와 흑단근데 내가 뒤쪽 도착이 생 정말 정도도 생각해 버렸어.
And so when we therefore apply Buddha's teachings on cultivating the perfect health of our minds, then we learn that the Buddha taught many different levels and stages of the teaching that help us to attain the balance and health of our minds in the short term, like immediately, and then over time, long-term benefits and long-term well-being and happiness in the mind. So the temporary happiness and then ultimate happiness. Happiness over a long period, happiness over the short term, happiness over the long term. Happiness right now, in the present time, happiness from lifetime to lifetime, and ultimate happiness, everlasting happiness. All of that Buddha taught how we can achieve. And there are teachings and cycles and stages of that teaching for us to apply to attain that level. Through working with our own minds and applying Buddha's teachings to our minds, we can attain that.
되는데 답시 가시는 다 넘바 상지바 무스 쳤네 넘바 상지바다 잡슨 루디 냠스는 거야 요레스 영 가시는 넘바 상지라 잡스 마송나 냠스는 저기 요레스 된다 답시 못 보여레스.
And some of these methods that Buddha revealed to us require us first to have bow down to and take refuge in Buddha. And some of those can be used by anyone, whether or not they go for refuge in the Buddha. They can still follow these instructions and still benefit from them. So there's many different instructions and levels of teaching. And all of these teachings, all of them go directly to benefit the mind. They're directly for the mind.
가르에서는 당나서 나서 리가 있지다 낙섬요에서 나서 리가 무슨이나 등도이나 샘진스 있는 정도 다 리가 있으면 하나 조사요 말했어. 정말 리가 있으면 어떻게 그랬어? 데 리가 있으면 거다 자고도 소토 있지. yit nga so kombo ya pos lam samatna ngam tamna lini ka lam samna ka lam samna ka ya pos sa ko malis dena ti jinchen ti on de shine sanji zu yit lam samji tabshi de ngo so malis.
Because the Buddha taught the methods for us to, we really talk about like what is it that makes us, sentient beings. We act, we engage through body, speech, and mind. These are the three sort of avenues through which we act and we engage and we experience. And so, whoever we are, any animal, any sentient being, there's kind of, that's it. That's what we do and that's what we are comprised of. These three avenues: the body, the physical expression, the speech, the verbal expression, and the mind, the mental expression. But among these three doors of body, speech, and mind is principal, because mind is like the king that commands body and speech. So you want to make sure, and this is what Buddha focused on, is the mind, because the mind, if you put the mind on the right path, body and speech will follow naturally. But if you try to just focus on putting the body and the speech on the right path and you ignore the mind, well, you're not going to be able to accomplish your endeavors, because the mind is what we really need to start with. The mind is the one that sort of governs and controls the other avenues. And that's what Buddha's teachings are about, is focusing on the mind. That's why the Buddha Dharma primarily is a method or means to work with and refine and tame our own minds. Because if we really take care to work with and subdue our own minds, train our minds, then so many troubles and afflictions that we experience mentally and psychologically will just fall away. They will just dissolve. So, like, I'll give you an example. So, like, if you want to take a walk outside and you're going in any stretch of any sort of terrain on this earth, you're going to come across like jagged walks that aren't well maintained. There might be thorns, there might be stones and rocks, there might be bristling grass and all sorts of different types of terrain. And imagine you have to walk barefoot. And maybe you have control over your immediate, like your front lawn. You can mow your lawn and you can clear the path of debris and prickly things and rocks and stones. So maybe you can walk barefoot safely around your own property. But once you get past your property line, who knows what the nature of the road and the paths are ahead of you. If you're going to walk around barefoot, you're liable to get many cuts and sores on your feet, because you're going to encounter uneven, jagged earth and pieces of rock and thorn and stones that will get caught in your feet and cause you pain. So what's the solution? On the one hand, you certainly can't go and clear the ground and the earth all over the whole earth. That's impossible. You have control over your one little area, that's it. But what you can do is you can wear shoes. If you cover just the soles of your feet and you protect the soles of your feet, you don't need to worry about clearing the entire earth of debris and rocks and thorns, because wherever you walk, your feet are protected. They will not get cut. They will not get any sort of sores or any kind of obstruction, shoes now to protect the soles of your feet. In the same way, if we just focus on training the mind, there are always going to be triggers in our environment. We have no control over the environment that will arise outside of us that are always ready to aggravate our emotional poisons of desire, anger, pride, jealousy, ignorance. All of these poisons of mind. It's like if we try to get rid of the external triggers, there's no end. We can't do it. So, but if we can just work with taming our own minds, then none of these external triggers can harm us. We become invincible to them, even though we don't have to change the external world. We can just change our minds, and then we're able to be impervious. And then these emotional poisons aren't just constantly inflamed and aggravated. Actually, our minds are the same like our bodies. You know what happens when a person just eats and lays around, eats and lays around, eats and sleeps, doesn't work out, doesn't do any sort of strenuous physical activity, just lays around and lounges and eats? Well, what happens? The body gets very sluggish, the body becomes very weak, the body becomes like almost like the smallest thing. It can't handle anything because why? It's out of shape. The body's out of shape. And when the body is out of shape, the smallest little thing can knock you over. Somebody comes and slaps you and you fall down. You can't handle any sort of hike or any kind of strenuous activity. Why? Because you haven't trained your body. You have no conditioning whatsoever. And you go out and you're completely weak and kind of just puny. But if you work out and you start doing the strenuous, you do exercise, maybe you have a healthy meal, you go out and you do some exercise, you're training the body, you're getting the body stronger. What are you doing? You're toughening up the body. You're increasing resilience. You're making the body, through resistance training, you're making the body stronger. And eventually somebody punches you and you can just kind of hold your own. You don't get knocked down to the ground. You're very powerful, like the military guys who do all that drill training. And then they can stand up, somebody can come in and try to knock them down, and they can't get knocked to the ground because they have been working on building that strength through strenuous exercise and through conditioning. The mind is just like that. The more, if we don't train the mind, we don't challenge or provide any sort of training or resistance training to the mind becomes very weak. The smallest little thing is prickling us, offending us, upsetting us. Our minds are so weak and sensitive. But the more we work with our mind and train the mind, it's just like the body. It becomes stronger, it's able to handle more and more, and doesn't get knocked to the ground like this sensitive, puny thing, because the mind is something that we're training. So it's just like the body.
Okay, there is indeed the Dharma so the similar to her with Lila Natsamekona, Nika Zonder Chirgores, Zupulayon and Natsameo, which is the Zonder Chirgores, Simlayon, Natsaton to Kanmeo, which is the Zonder Chirgores.
The moral of the story is that if we want to have a mind free from suffering and a body free from sickness and ailments, we need to train. We need to train our bodies and train our minds. We train our bodies and our minds, and we'll have strong minds and strong bodies. But the benefits of training the body are limited to this life. You will yield the benefit of having a pretty strong and healthy body in this very lifetime. For as long as you have a body in this life, it will be healthy, it will be less vulnerable to diseases and so forth. But that's it, that's as far as it goes. But training the mind doesn't just leave it at this life. This training the mind benefits you lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, rebirth after rebirth after rebirth. So if you look at the benefits of training the body versus training the mind is 100,000 times, 100 times, 1,000 times more powerful and beneficial because it is not limited to benefiting us only in this life. It goes beyond this life.
They 아주 생그 니바잖아 하고 슉. 때는 아주 뭔지 잘 모르겠어. 쌤들이다 하니까 니바 참 모르겠어. 아주 그런 뜻가름 정성은 때 그 뜻가름 들리 말고 그런 뜻가름 와서 쌤들 정들 연구서 태수는 하니까 니바 참 모르겠어. 랑라 판통님 맞다가 쌤좀 몽골라 판통도 모르겠어.
But the thing is that the mind has so much strength and power. We need to recognize the power of our own minds, the strength of our own minds, first of all. Because if you train the mind, then the mind's power and strength becomes more and more apparent to you. It is incredibly strong and powerful, this mind. When you are able to unleash and tap into this reservoir of power and strength of your own mind, there's no limit to the benefit that you can accomplish for yourself and for all sentient beings.
Dinidi aso munga kana lama mongo tepato dimpote jiga tefta Dharma tan tangin itu sama sim bestobras sim jonder jeni distobla tongres 당상 아주 참전의 movie나 superpower 나 근데가 사실 진짜 뭐 sim bestobras 그래서 보고 stop 말했어.
And like all these, incredible examples we have of these great lamas, these great masters who have accomplished the siddhis and who have displayed these signs of accomplishment and these miracles. These are all the expression of the power of the mind. That's how they come about, through mind's power. Even like you look at these movies about these superheroes, but all that superhero business that comes from the power of mind. That's what it's showing you, the power of the mind.
Dinidi aso di jonderje sim jonderje di hani ba karchi mori 연구소 당선 대표 karchi 못 잡아서 당선 청와대에서 무보에서 관주에서 나 시주장 din 다다이 심대 어떤 보여 보면 유자가 그랬어. 배가 살아 논치들이 나도 심대라 보여 보자 모르겠어.
And so that's why it's so important that you give a good workout and a good training to your mind, especially. It's very important that we work with our minds, that we train our minds, because especially nowadays, it's even more important than ever before, because nowadays, the focus and the obsession is so much on the external, on the outer, like the wealth development and the money and the glories of the external world. All of the importance and all the emphasis is going on that, and nobody's even taking care to pay any attention to the mental health, to the mind. That's just like thrown to the wayside, and that's a big mistake. So we need to go back to bring the focus back to the health and working with our minds, training our minds.
Dindi가 좀 다츠 kana deva 당원단 두가르 좀 따거나 당가 좀 즈보 당나 sim kamnikana de jondre yopos kebobundus.
So if we want to have the optimal health and happiness of the mind and the body free from suffering, then we need to make sure we pay attention to training both our physical body and our mind. Both of these we need to train and work with.
Dindi디 simdina aso dapo yapo magjan simdina aso nar dukan mo porta kres. Chendale on dukan ta kres, sevshimane on dukan ta kres simde. Zupona dapo magjan na chendistana yapo yung mari ma pa deshira yung mari sina simdala dapo magjan na tamaso ni dukan na bata yung kres.
So the thing is we got to take care of our own minds. If we don't take care of looking after our own minds, it's going to give us a lot of suffering and a lot of misery, and it's not going to be limited just to this life. It's going to keep giving us more suffering in our future lives as well if we don't pay attention and take care of our minds. But if we just ignore our bodies and we don't take care of our bodies, the worst that can happen is our bodies will let us down, but just in this life. It won't really do any damage to us in the future lives if we ignore the health of our bodies. But if we ignore the health of our minds and we don't pay attention to taking care of our own minds, then life can really ruin us in this life and future lives, create so much suffering for us. That's why it's so important that we take care of our minds.
생전 수동 쓰인 나가서 얼등나는 돈카스지가 요 말했어. 근데 대바 문동카스지가 요 말했어. 정말 얼등나는 놓고 말했어. 대한 놓그랬어. 근데 다 대바 얼등나는 만도나 다들 탑시든 가서 옆에서 하고 그래 막또 탑시든 하고나 아주 높아진다고 연구 말이야. 나고 같은 놓그랬잖아. 그다나 연구 말했어. 내가 가서 제지 얼등나는 매체 그 탑시든 대바 용체 그 탑시든 가서 하고 그랬어.
And no matter who we are, all beings, all living things, we want to be happy. Not a single sentient being wants to experience suffering. And that way we are all alike. Not a single being wants to suffer, wants to be in pain. Not a single being wants to be unhappy. Everyone wants happiness and wants to be free from suffering. But the thing is we need to understand really well how we can bring about that accomplishment. Like we want to accomplish our goals of finding happiness and being free from suffering. We need to know how to do it, because just wanting it, that's not enough. Just wanting and waiting, just wishing and waiting doesn't bring about fruition of our dreams. We have to actually understand how to accomplish these dreams, how to go out and make it happen. And so part of that is understanding what we need to do to ensure that we become free from suffering and we have happiness. So there is a primary cause of all this suffering. The primary cause of our suffering is this I, me, that thought of the self-focus. That's the primary cause of our suffering. We need to, of course, there's some consideration we need to take for ourselves, but putting every energy into our self-preservation at the expense of everybody else and putting ourselves as the center and the most important all the time, ignoring the needs of others, that's not good. But there is like a secret instruction. There's what we call Mena Upadesha. There's like a secret code, a secret trick, a secret instruction that if only we really knew this, all our problems would be solved. And that is, the secret is that we want happiness, we want to be happy, we want well-being, and we don't want to suffer. Then if that's what we want, the secret is we should focus on bringing happiness to others, giving happiness to others, put all our attention on benefiting others, and automatically our own happiness will come from that. And that's the secret that ordinary beings don't understand, but Buddha understood this. Lord Buddha knew this to be the case. He understood this secret truth, that universal truth that if I focus on my own self-preservation and accomplishing my own self-benefit, that's going to bring suffering. That's why sentient beings continue to suffer. But when I put others first and focus entirely on bringing happiness, giving happiness to others, the secret to my own happiness lies within that selfless, altruistic focus, Buddha understood this, but we don't understand. So what happens is, ironically, sentient beings, all energy is going toward this goal and agenda of bringing happiness for myself. And the whole mentality is, as long as I'm happy, I bring my own happiness. Giving others suffering doesn't matter. I don't care what happens to other people or other beings, as long as I'm okay, as long as I'm happy. The focus is, the irony of this is that the exact opposite comes from that mentality and that focus. The more we focus on accomplishing our own benefit and happiness and ignoring or diminishing the benefit and happiness of others, the more we experience only suffering, exactly the opposite of what we want for ourselves. The more we focus on me, on I, on bringing happiness to me and avoiding suffering for me, the more we bring suffering upon ourselves, and that's the plight of the sentient beings. But what Lord Buddha understood was that it is when we treat others, when we focus on bringing happiness to others, therein lies the great secret to our own happiness and well-being.
아주 단디 선제방을 나름 그 초스타지 진행해서 하고 그랬어. 베이지서는 뭐 자성 청성적인 나온다. 아니면 아주 초와 총총적인 나온다. 아주 증자식 반 된다지나. 저는 그 간이나 뭐자 받을 살려 보정통 제작하는 제가 체력을 간다는 거를 지금 찾아주다는 거지. 뭐 정말 그 온도 옆보리 또 무슨 어디서 정말 저랑 가르쳐주는 거. 그 저런 왜 대화 생각 듣는 사람이 이거 말이야. 저랑 대화 좀 그래. 뭐지 저거는 저런 간다는 생각 저랑 로빠지 그랬어. 다 저런 저 그룹스 나온다. 정말 나 구정창세다. 뭐 썩식 저랑 간 말이서. 언제다 그런 거 롱도 치우지 사람들이 있는데 저런 거 로빠지 하나 요 말이다. 저가 내가 뭐지 온도 뭐 빠지는 나다. 저랑 생각지 보이는 거 말이서. 내가 저 지금 샤워 충충 구성한 상황 방나 내가 처음 그랬어.
And if we put this secret instruction of Buddha to the test, we can see it for ourselves to be true, even on a small scale. Like if we just test it out, let's say in our own household with our family, or like for example with our peers, like our classmates, for example, those in the same class as us. We see that when we focus on helping others and treating others, putting others first all the time, being a kind person, being a good person, helping others, always thinking of others' benefit, then our environment and our peers love us and like us, and they speak highly of us, and everybody wants to be around us, and everybody wants to help us because our focus is we're kind people, we're benefiting other people, and then that brings us happiness automatically because everybody's very endeared toward us. And the same level, we are naturally, we alleviate a lot of our own troubles that way. We have like a whole, more popular people. But then when our focus is entirely self-aggrandizing and it's always like, oh, I come first at whatever expense, naturally the people around us are going to resent us. They're not going to want to help us. They're going to talk badly about us, and that's going to create obstacles for our own success, and it's going to create our own suffering, and we're not going to be very happy. So we can actually see that this whole mentality and focus on putting others first, how that actually benefits us. We can just see it in our day-to-day lives if we were to put it to the test.
내가 좀 한국에 가고 이거 말이지. 내가 저거 한국 소속은 처음에 갔다가 나서 내가 산도주던 대가지 제자만 나서 무슨들 한국 요리스 통계 요리다. 이나 맞아 그 탈수도 하고 고요 말이지. 이제 선진과 돌아다니는 송 요리스. 이제 내가 저 나라한테 뒤지 총을 본 거였어.
And it's really not that difficult to understand this point. In some senses, it's very simple. It's something that we can experience directly. We try this kind of way operating, this modus operandi out. We will see in our lives and in our experiences this to be true and this to be the case. That the more we diminish our self-attention, our self-cherishing, the more we are happy and the more we benefit. And Buddha knew this, and Buddha taught this, that we need to decrease this ego, this I, this me focus.
근데 아주 생각 그거를 매빠져야 되나? 나 아주 그나 나한테 지금 초를 동안 아주 생각 그거 뭐 그런 식의 생각 그랬어.
And so the key then to overcoming, or rather dissolving away our suffering of our minds, the more we are able to weaken and diminish this I, this me focus, the self, the more we are able to unburden ourselves or alleviate for ourselves the pain and suffering in our minds.
Tena is it also not to seem like you come out of the don't take another than that one point you did after a touch more watching do see so you touch more watching do see that didn't done the touch it was a channel not to check in.
And so nowadays, there's a lot of methods for overcoming depression and similar ailments like that. And so I want to talk a little bit about the ways to heal from depression and these kind of conditions. So, of course, I can tell you, meditate. Everybody has an understanding of meditation. We say meditation will benefit you. But just saying that is not going to help. We actually have to do it, and you have to actually do the practice. For example, like shamatha, calm, abiding meditation, can alleviate, you can't say it will alleviate all of the suffering of mind, that's very difficult, but at least the immediate or temporary sufferings of mind, shamatha meditation can ease and calm those sufferings. And this is a practice that's not limited to just Buddhists. Buddhists and non-Buddhists alike can practice shamatha or calm, abiding meditation and find benefits. So, first of all, when we think about how does this shamatha, how does meditation benefit the mind? Well, think about how our mind generally operates in the state of constant agitation and in the state of hope and fear. Many concepts arising from hope and fear, also known as expectation and dread. And so we're always worrying about, hoping to find some happiness and well-being, afraid of suffering, dreading suffering, or, you name it. It could be something like wealth or material obtainments, where at the same time we are hoping that we don't lose our money and our wealth, worrying about losing it, hoping that we want to gain more material wealth and so forth. Or it could be sickness, we're hoping to get better, hoping not to be sick, worrying that we will get sick, worrying that we're getting sicker, whatever it is, that hope and fear, that oscillating between hoping for good and fearing bad, that we hold on to. Our minds are holding on to all of these discursive thoughts and concepts that are all caught up in this oscillation of hope and fear. And when our minds are constantly in that state of agitation, over time this leads to all sorts of ailments of the mind, and unease and stress and anxiety and many worries, and then our minds are unable to be calm and happy because we're burdened by these fears and worries.
아주 남도 리도 남도 모두 하라 시작 주고 말아 내 말씀 롱성도 못한 정도 그래서 그 샘글 뜨면서 매주 그랬어.
And so how the shamatha, how it works and how it benefits the mind is that when you're abiding in this calm abiding shamatha meditation, the stillness meditation, you're stilling the mind. So all of these discursive thoughts and kind of this compulsive ideation of hope and fear, when you're in the state of meditation, and you can call it meditation or shamatha, whatever you call it, the point is, you're in this state where the mind is calmed to the point where you are not following after all of these discursive thoughts, whatever their nature might be, thoughts of hope and fear, and you're not allowing them to kind of like take over the mind. You're keeping the mind calm, so then these thoughts, they don't overtake you. And when you are not constantly abuzz with all of these discursive thoughts of hope and fear, the mind is calm naturally, the mind is at peace, and the mind is in a state of happiness and well-being. And so because before the mind was just so afflicted, constantly agitated with the arisings of these discursive thoughts and emotions of hope and fear, and that created so much suffering in the mind. Now the mind can calm and the mind settles into its natural state, and all of these thoughts and emotions, they can't arise and overtake the mind. The mind is just resting in its natural calm state. And that nature naturally benefits. How, if you want to know how shamatha or calm abiding benefits the mind, this is how. By allowing the mind to just settle and be in its natural state. And so it's no longer at the mercy of the arising of discursive thoughts of hope and fear.
남진 다스나 가서 그 심들라 나소사는 접촉이요 말했어. 어떤 님선미가 심든 걸고 그랬어. 되니 내가 이런 거 저때 심 코로나에 막 강을 붙여. 내가 강을 붙을 생각 듣는지. 내가 지금 그랬어. 되니 내가 그다 전에 뭐지 되거든. 내가 저 심들라 나소 접촉. 근데 심들 말아도 접촉인데 심 코로나 롱진도 다죠. 초딩도 접촉 그랬어.
Because normally our minds are constantly buzzing and buzzing. We don't give our minds a rest, even for a moment. The mind is constantly working around the clock, night and day, 24 hours, just going and going and cycling and cycling. And after a while, the mind just becomes so exhausted and so overwhelmed with troubles because the mind is just constantly going. And with this meditation of shamatha, it's like you're finally giving the mind a rest. You're letting the mind rest in its natural state. And this naturally is conducive toward mental health and toward the health and healing of the mind.
그래서 내가 전에 검탐도 중에 들어 시작하면서 정말 하고 그래서 아니 검탐도 망보여랬다니나 그래서 다양한 이런 집합사 지금 뒤서는 등식 탑시 동보다 전에 검지들 지렁적 생각 때문에 먹는 스타트 이제 스타트 그래서
I'm not going to go into details on how to do shamatha meditation practice because there are methods, many ways to meditate, and you for the most part all know some, so I won't go into it today, but just introducing you to the different methods that we have at our disposal in the Buddha Dharma to calm the mind and to overcome suffering in the mind. Shamatha meditation is one of these methods.
그래서 니바드니 노조 적인지 니바드 가리즈 나마서 제리즈나 하고가 제리제 야 맞죠 그 제리디 지금 계속 총을 담고 그랬어 제리디 총을 담나 맞죠 형 생각 강을 못 보서 되게 살짝 그랬어.
So that's the first method for calming the mind of afflictions, and the second method is the prickly, easily offendable mind. We need to decrease that oversensitive, prickly nature of our minds. That's like every little thing gets on our nerves type of thing.
가르치는 아주 갈등 아주 제리디 최소나 아주 더젠도 제리디랑 높다면 이제 아주 단계지. 제리디 요즘에 좀 띵가들라 정말 높다 정도 그랬어. 정말 높다 정도는 잠바스 그 아니 그 스타트먼스 많이 나오는데 나라리 삼네. 잠바가 내가 많이 나처럼 나라리 삼네. 이런 생각 강한 쳐든 능력적인 그랬어.
So the reason why we need to decrease the prickly, offendable, oversensitive mind is because we have a saying, here we go, we have a saying in Tibet, and it goes, a person who is easily offended finds themselves always surrounded by harm. It's like you become almost like you invite more harm and trouble because you're constantly in a state of self-focused paranoia where you're somehow the victim of everybody's like wrongdoing, and everything that happens around you becomes perceived as some sort of harm. So like if somebody makes a face or an expression, all of a sudden that person, the individual who's in that state of oversensitive, like, victim mindset is, they become almost paranoid, like, why is that person glaring at me? Why do they have to give me that kind of look? And so that's the kind of effect of that mentality.
Dene 지금 가서 지금 가르치는 남편랑 만난 삼사지 딜레이 제거가 된다 딜레이스잖아 이용되라 즉파사 된다 이제 내가 좀 쓴다 내가 지금 거 말했어 그때 정말 제리라 지지나 처럼도 그러라 내가 이제 가서 쓴다 싶어요 거 말했어 근데 대초 정말 미빠도나 페이지잖아 다 못한 성카요나 저배다 성카요나 영향을 가리고는 되게 지상로 상도 된다서 벌써 다 추심부터 더 메시지 내가 보고 말했어 Today, 남친랑 같이 살거나 남친 지내셔서 다 똑같다. 지속시와 공부하면 다 되면 남나타나 지속시와 모비나 다 이제 지속소에 긍정을 삼는 제 된다 삼는 거는 생각도 못 했어. 때때에 더려. 이나 된다 삼는 담마트 너 된다 손까지 그제 제가 그 컨트롤지나 세비도 못 말했어. 생각 때문에 그랬어. 남친이 된다 벌써나 남친은 고르면 삼는 거는 컨트롤자 된다 지만 측바자 된다. 람나스티 거만. 된다 이제 제비데 모니터링 그런다. 등가스티 지금 소스티 그랬어.
And so a person who's like prone to irritation and just like extremely easily, their feathers easily ruffle, the prickly types, they're more prone to suffering because it's like naturally everything arises as a form of like almost like targeting them. And so I gave the example of a person making a face or something, and then that type of like prickly personality type then perceives that as a direct assault on them, and then they become very defensive and offended. Or the same thing, if somebody says something, says something, person taking an offense to the speech of others, making it personal, becoming very irritated. All this does is kind of rev up the mind to become more irritable, more unsettled, and experience more suffering. Or like, for example, on the road, maybe you experience some traffic, and then the person that's prickly will become immediately roused up, and there will be road rage and anger. And what does that solve? All that does is make you unhappy and miserable and upset during a traffic jam, or like a person maybe there's a delay in your airplane delay or flight delay, and then you become really annoyed and irritated, and then it's sort of like unnecessary misery that you create for yourself by kind of like indulging in that mentality of being the prickly personality type that's easily irritated and offended. Otherwise, if you can kind of change your focus, that same traffic jam that you're in, if you just kind of relax the mind in that nature and just say, okay, well, so there's traffic. Oh, well, that's cool. I can handle this. Then you don't have to suffer. There's no more misery. You're not like sitting there during the entire time that you're stuck in traffic. You're also boiling over that traffic and super angry and upset. Now you're alleviated from that unhappiness. So naturally the mind is much happier and more at ease. Similarly, if you're facing a delay in your flight, you can look at it kind of like, oh, okay, so it's an extra hour wait, that's fine, it's an hour-long movie time. You can watch a movie during that time or whatever, you kind of make the best of the situation instead of just getting enraged and then getting annoyed at other people, complaining, trying to, make a big stink, and then everybody's unhappy, and then you're only fueling more unhappiness, becoming more angry, becoming more upset and unsettled. So that's another kind of key to promoting happiness in the mind, is to not indulge that kind of like tantrum throwing, irritable, kind of prickly mindset of like where you get easily irritated and offended. When you aren't in that state, then you can kind of naturally find that your mind is much more happy and at ease, and you're not burdened by a lot of tension.
그래서 단도 다당은 그가 거의 증리주성을 막고 때나 몽고 요리스. 이나 몽고 요리스. 이나 그저 정말 당가서 그 지금 심 지금 정도서 지금 맞나 그저 그런신 그 심나 강가 그런 몽고 잡기 요리스. 몽고 잡기를 지금 샤와 총총서 그 콩토 침보동이 이런 것이고 이런 그 이런 동양도 요바 그 쪽보 쪽보 쓰이나 대소 것이고서 그래 정말 셈이고서야 막 것이고서야 말이스. 이나 아주 심드는 주제리의 총주 동정나 다른 그 생각을 집어 요 말이 로나요는 메디서 도생 총로 그래서 이제 아주 정말 그 내용 심근을 등간 몇비 탈수지 다 제리 총을 당할 빅터 친구들이스.
And so that's I just gave you one or two examples, but there's many more where those came from. But basically, it's just about working with our minds, and if we work with our minds and train the mind, then we're less prone to that sort of tendency to be just irritated and upset over the smallest things, and then we have less suffering and hardship. But otherwise, if we don't have any mind training and we don't work with our minds, we're going to be more prone to being the prickly, irritable types that become, all riled up over the smallest inconvenience, and then that makes everybody around us just as miserable as we are, so we make ourselves more unhappy, and then our friends and our companions are naturally sort of feeling uptight or uncomfortable or, unhappy in our presence. And so that's why it's important to decrease the tendency for the sort of prickly, irritable personality type. We should decrease that in our minds. When we do that, naturally we are happier, we're less stressed out, and the people around us are naturally more relaxed, and we have a more chill vibe, and so we're less annoying to be around, and we're also less annoyed. So it's a benefit to decrease that prickly personality, irritable nature. Decreasing that will also be more conducive to the health and happiness of our minds.
몽포지 동성 싱그 나차대요. 그 제리 체송에 되는 싱그 나차 몽포나 요리스.
Nowadays, hello. Many people nowadays that suffer from afflictions of the emotions and the mind, a lot of that is due, at least in part, to overindulging the prickly, irritable nature.
이제 뜻속성하서라 편집자는 이유 말이죠. 가서 제리치는 가서라 편집자는 또 배워 말이죠. 제리치서나 이런나요 편토걸 말이잖아요. 편토걸 말이죠. 얘네들 제리때 총수서나 이런나요 편토걸이잖아요. 편토걸이죠.
And the other thing is that indulging the prickly, easily offendable nature doesn't benefit us in the slightest. It doesn't benefit us, and it doesn't benefit others. It's completely useless and of absolutely no benefit to us whatsoever. So that's another reason why we can go ahead and dispense with indulging this kind of prickly, easily offended, easily irritable nature. Actually, we can go ahead and throw it away. Then everybody will be happy. This irritable nature. That's the second skillful means. Now we're on number 3, third skillful means. Third one is patience, practicing patience. So there are many different types of patience. Today what I want to focus on is the patience known as the patience to forbear any and all suffering. The patience that does not shirk from suffering out of fear, but feels, I can handle this. Whatever it is, I can handle this, I can take it. Forbearance. Because if we're able to cultivate and grow that kind of patience, then even like great sufferings can be diminished to tiny sufferings for us. Like, and how that works, like, because for example, let's just say we get the flu or cold and we have, you know, that headache and the fever and we just feel all achy and miserable. But when we're experiencing that, if we just say to ourselves, this is just a bad cold, it's just a flu, I can get through this, I'll be fine. Then the mind's suffering is less, and of course the physical pain and suffering is also less. And so also, like, if you are able to cultivate this kind of patience, like, we have many different types of suffering all around us in the external environment, but if we're able to think like this, then we will be able to experience alleviation, and we won't really be at the mercy of all of these sufferings. For example, if we're able to have that kind of patience arise, like whatever comes our way, whatever suffering we experience, even the big sufferings, we can say, that's like somebody says something, let's say somebody curses us out, like somebody yells at us or says something hurtful. If we just let it slide off our back and we just say, no worries, you know, that's okay, they said that, but I'm not going to take it in, I'm not going to like worry over it, whatever, let it be, then we don't give it any power, and then we don't experience suffering. Then that negative speech can't harm us. So then we just being able to protect ourselves from the suffering of somebody else's harsh words, because we're practicing patience. And so that's why patience is like armor. It's like this armor of protection for our minds.
Anggaran sobat zobat komatni on ngambana sibuze som hamada cerong semla dengar mopos cekris cerong kontrol zakari dengar cekris itu tu me jamba cerong la lame tem korong sampai duduk keris me jamba sampai duduk ya me jamba cerong la dengar start sangura ni cerong la kerdem da jingan manda jene cerong la semla dengar start keris sampai ni kotena apiura jadi cerong ke on dengar bana langsung saya cerong zobat komatna cerong dengar takri jambat ke sampai dusung harus. Yenna yang tak cerong zobat gomjang jambat sampai dusung mari cerong dengar tak tokyo maris.
Like, example is like if somebody slanders you, insults you, right? If you are like immediately, like if you're not able to practice patience and you let it get to you, then you start like mulling over it and boiling about it, and then you become just totally angry and enraged, and then your mind is not at peace because you're suffering, because you're so angry and you're upset and you're wanting to, you know, do something about it because somebody said these bad words about you. And what happens is you're giving that person the satisfaction of knowing they got to you for one thing, because then you're fulfilling their wishes, which is obviously if they said that about you, they want to get to you, they want to upset you, and they've done that. So now, not only are you sitting around being miserable, angry, and upset, so you're not happy, but you've actually just given them exactly what they want and let them beat you at the game. But if you are able to just not let it get to you and practice patience, well, then you've already won, because now they didn't accomplish what they set out to accomplish, which was to get under your skin and upset you, and you're also happy, you're not bothered by it, so then you're untroubled, so it's a win-win.
아따 띵아 남바지 제송 상 신나 등을지 용 파티나 지라게 그랬어. 대그는 딱 등을지 막 붙여요 말했어. 나 저런 거 하나는 옆에서 제고선 접할 공수다 대야는 용 말했을 때 엄청 못했어.
So the thing about the worldly mentality of the like kind of ordinary worldly person is that when somebody does something or says something bad to us, our immediate instinct is to, clap back at them and say something mean back, right? The idea is like this sort of like vengeful attitude. But that only perpetuates suffering for both sides. So if you want to know like the best answer, like the best retort, the best response to somebody saying something mean is patience. Patience is like the highest and best possible refutation to somebody's insult.
저런 거 조건 검정은 잠바티 삼바양 르트비오 말이지. 잠바티 삼바양 지금 잠바티나 지금 삼바 문득지 않지 뭐 삼바다 조건 검정 그랬어.
Because if you show patience in response to the, meanness and insults of others, then you've won because that person is doesn't get the satisfaction of knowing that they got to you, so they didn't fulfill their intention and their wish. So even if your motivation is you just you don't want them to have the satisfaction of knowing that they, harmed you, well then practice patience. That's the best way to do it, because then they don't get their fulfillment of what they're aiming for either.
생각했어. 인디디다 나서 다시 등을 낮추는 게 조바데 한리바 조바 같이 모래서 당선다스 나가서 다 코리 아까서 통나데 나지야 코리 통나서 나다는 지금 셔롤 그 여건에 나서 랑랑 그 셈스 정들지 마트나 다 셔롤 그 여건에 나서 셈나 등을 간다 된다 한리바 뭐 요래서 남나가 요래서 근데 제를 남편 진가요를 공조장 가요를 뭐 요래서 저 너는 맨날 저렇게 말했어. 나서 제가 며칠 말고 며칠 전 정통 지나다 맨날 저렇게 말했어. 나시로 그 센팅데 요도 상점에 잡아만 보여라. 내가 처음에 저렇게 말했어. 옛날 나서 그 생각 대화서 그 생각을 등가를 좀 말고 그런 거 센팅 포즈 쳐고 상한다 나서 생각 정들지니 나가서 내가 다시 다음에 하셔서 선저라. 정내면 봄 내가 세제대 총으로 동 내가 등을 낮추면 그냥 조바 성공장 that's that's
why this skillful means of being able to, whatever suffering comes our way, to approach that with a sort of attitude of like, I can handle this. It's not going to get to me. And that patience, that forbearance in the face of challenges and suffering, that's something so valuable and so powerful. Why, especially nowadays in our present environment, everywhere you look, it's like, if you don't have some kind of control over your own mind, if we're not taking care of working with our own mind, it's kind of like good luck, because the external world is constantly in this state of like antagonism toward us. Like no matter where you look, like there's people ready to challenge us, ready to insult us, and there's all kinds of problems and suffering just waiting for us to kind of take the bait, and people ready to just angry and vitriol everywhere. And so it's so easy to get caught up in that. But we can't change people. Even one lifetime, our whole lives we can't. Even 100 lives we cannot change people, because the beings, the sentient beings, they're inconceivable what creates these causes and conditions for them to come in the way that they are. We can't possibly destroy them or change them all external. We can't change the outside of us. What we can do is we can change our minds by focusing on accomplishing benefit of the mind, benefit of others. And so when we do this through these three skillful means that I talked about, the first one is meditation, shamatha, calm abiding. Second one is reducing this irritable kind of prickly mindset that's constantly focused on like, I'm the target here, that kind of attitude. Reducing that. And then the third one is practicing patience in the face of suffering, feeling like I can handle this, I'm going to forbear this, that forbearance. These qualities are extremely valuable in ensuring that we will experience happiness and be free from suffering of the mind.
And that's all 나서 정들을 생각 정들을 제가 말하는 소용 지금 뭐 쓰는 거는 쉽지 않아요. 지금 가령 맞아 스톱 제모라고 쳐버렸어. 아주 뭐 수포대가 정들이 뭐 수포 비슷도 좀 고쳐고 나라 마선다 뭔가 내가 좀 된다 지나가서 쌤라 마선 뭔거스 쌤가 마선 뭔거스 형들 그랬어 근데 비슷도 좀 고쳐 그랬어 내가 잠깐 소식 한번 또 말했어.
And so, if we're able to do that, then when we are faced with challenges and difficult circumstances in our environment, we become so strong. We become very powerful, mighty human being. It's kind of like, you know, if a person's a bodybuilder and they're constantly lifting weights and pushing their body and working out, they become so muscular. They become like the muscle man, you know, like muscles everywhere, pure muscle. They're super powerful and strong. You look at them and these bodybuilders, they're like, you know, intimidating in their strength and power. Well, we can become like bodybuilders of the mind builders, where we build the muscles of our mind through these practices, and then the mind becomes like this powerful, sort of like invincible force of power and strength, just like the image of the bodybuilder that has built all of these muscles out of sheer resistance training and so forth. We can become then very redoubtable, like this powerful force of mind through working on the muscles of the mind.
어떤 거래 이제 심나 정보 전화다 단단 내가 주제야 그 호블레스가 상관없는 되는데 지금 가서 동생 끝나서 그런식으로 믿고 그랬어. 그래서 처음에 심 잠비도 심나 정들지 마트네 잔송데 이나자 지가 용는 거요라. 근데 심나 또 수용되게 이나자 그런식으로 지금.
Because when our minds become very strong, then the feelings of hopelessness, feelings of depression, feelings of, you know, just this sort of difficulty and suffering in the mind, they naturally dissipate. The stronger we make our minds, the less these feelings and these, you know, conditions can take root in our minds. Because a lot of times, like when we're totally reliant on the power from outside, then there's a limit to how much we can really alleviate these conditions. But the more we build the strength from within of our minds, naturally, a lot of these afflictions, this is like a profound antidepressant and antidote to a lot of these afflictions is through building the strength of the mind.
당선가 좀 가시데 인증인지고 초 옆벌이 되나 납도 건가 내가 마음에 심판이 되는 시간에 듣고 건가 얘나 가서 심 된다 정들이 정된 상태 뭔데서 옆벌이 납고 말이죠 저런 심 정신 그런 수리가 있어요 내가 좀 뭐들아 초 옆벌이서 encourage 된다 이제 그런 쪽에 심을 수다야 되라 그래 뭐 잠깐 심을 수다기라 저 옆번도 뭐 그때 심숙치 가려야 돼요 얘나 나름 쪽에 심을 정들지 자는 심숙다고 말해 나름 쪽 정신을 수리를 했어요
Nowadays, like some people, they always focus on like positive reinforcement, and there's almost like the expectation, like you have to pat people on the back and constantly tell them how great they're doing and compliment them and reassure them all the time, because then they'll feel good about themselves, and then, you know, they'll have more confidence and so forth. The problem is when a person then begins to depend for their sense of self-assessment on the praises and compliments and, you know, reinforcements of the external, then that sort of sets them up for being dependent on that. But the more we're able to practice working with our own minds and strengthening that mind within, the less we will need to validation from others, the less we will need the reinforcement and the praise of others. So if you think about it, what's the purpose of the idea of positive reinforcement? Oh, you're doing a great job, keep going. Well, the whole point of that is encouragement. It's to encourage and inspire and give some kind of feeling of strength to the mind, inspire the mind. But we won't need that anymore because we will find that strength within ourselves, and then we will no longer need validation from others or validation from outside of ourselves, because that strength will come from within.
내가 좀 무장 같아서 저 옆벌이 나야 돼 런스도 말이야 잔나 땡고요라 저 잔나 땡고야 돼 가팅나 용용 말이야 가시고 뭐 옆벌에서 그 저다 내가 스타트 그래서 에너지 가시고 스타트요 말이지 근데 다들 무스타파들이야 얘나 나는 저 런스도 생각 좀 그렇지구나 나랑 유서 그래서 땡고 같았어 얘는 가팅나 저랑 생각 쇼요 그랬어
The problem with relying on the other people telling us that we're okay. Oh, hey, you're doing a great job. Keep going. The problem with that is that makes us reliant on an external condition that is outside of our own control. We're like hoping and relying on somebody else to come and tell us we're okay and tell us that we're doing well. And relying on any kind of external force like that, it's not going to bring about consistency for us, because by nature, an external power is just that. It's external. So therefore, we have no consistency. Maybe sometimes people will give us that energy and will say nice things to us, and other times they won't give us what we want. They won't validate us when we need them to validate us, and then we're out of luck because we've put all of our energy and hopes in something outside of ourselves to tell us we're okay. Well, now we don't need that anymore, because we can be our own, through self-reliance, we can be our own source of encouragement and strength. When our source of strength and validation comes from within, it is not weak or vulnerable to being lost or not being continuously maintained, because we have it within ourselves at all times. And then we're no longer at the mercy of what other people say or do to make us feel secure.
이 탈시 선보드는 아주 chen 판파게지고 용도했어.
This third skillful means will bring vast benefit in this very lifetime.
걔네 70만 판파 디즈 용도했어.
And even in the future lives as well, show more benefit, even a little bit.
걔네 단계 탑시 시바도 시작했어.
So now I'm going to give you the fourth skillful means. More.
아야 탑시 시바도 가르치는 거 좀 샴바도 너지 보냐 되랬어.
Awesome. The fourth skillful means is cultivating love and compassion.
샴바도 너지 나야 되는 좀 로아 쓰이나 럼슨도 요리스. 내가 같은 문진지 특요 말했다. 요리스 가서 보는 무슨이나 요다 던조이나 요리스. 던조 능가 나가 솔직히 디즈그 던조 능가 가서 보는 스탑도 무슨 그래서 장도 스톱자데 좋아하지 장장이야. 대초나요. 샴바도 너지 그 지금 요리스.
Awesome. So, love and compassion is something that is there in all sentient beings. All sentient beings have this loving, compassionate nature. All of us, all beings, all humans have it. It's easier to see sometimes in humans, but animals have it too. Even the predatory animals like the tigers and the leopards that literally prey, are carnivorous, and they hunt and they prey on the lives of other beings. But even they have this seed of compassion and love within them too. All beings have it.
옛날 당아들도 전부 문진지고 그랬어. 무슨 되는 문진지 사기 되는 샴바도 형제들 자체를 또 그랬어.
But first we have to recognize it. Once we've recognized this nature, then we have to increase and nurture and grow our love and compassion.
당아초나 간다요들이 남나 당아초 샴바 남나 가리다나 샴바 남나디 아초 senjin dakazu deva to dambar chichik deva to mandrana sanjit shangatis deva to mandrana sanjit shangatis.
So how do we define love or loving kindness, love? Kindness and love basically means this feeling of wanting other beings to have happiness and not to lose that happiness, not to be separated from that happiness. That's the definition of love.
Nyonji layote karlizana, nyonji layote bertukar tum tarsona samji. Bertukar tum tarsona samji te nyonji layote.
Compassion is the converse of that. It is the feeling of if only these beings can be free from suffering. That's the definition of compassion. Wanting and longing for beings to become free from their suffering.
다들 샴바나 nyonji ting이 다 체험도 청만한테 요리했어.
But loving compassion, all of you have this.
가르치는 요들이 생긴데 년들이 체험 청만한 요들이 생긴 탑잡도 요리했어.
Why is it that I can guarantee, I know for a fact that each and every one of you has love and compassion? Why?
가르치는 체험 속 영원한 파마, 영원한 초가스침에 영원한 보모, 영원한 쪽보 된다 민감치가 영원했어.
I can tell you for sure because all of you have You have parents, you have husbands and wives, children, sons and daughters, friends, loved ones. All of you have at least someone in that category. Right?
Tindi cherong kanyang chir gaza de kong inna. Dila tong tanna sanju sanna cherong la chamala yores.
And whoever that individual is for you, the one that you have affection for and love for, naturally you want that person to be happy.
Dila shamba la kres.
That's called love.
Tindi cherong kanyang chir gaza kamoti katu na kapsa. Dengar yo dengar tone misong na tone tosona sanju sanna cherong la chamala yores.
And in the same way, that person, that object of your love and affection, when they suffer, when they're sick, or when they're hurting, you naturally want them to be quickly free from their suffering. So everybody has this.
Deva dang santi dang dengar tentang mantan sandan kozo tenda struktur kada cikin tendu sha bu tongna tenda cikin da ko ta yoni stapre ma to teme mayo cikin.
And even the wild animals like the tigers and the leopards, they have it too, because their offspring, or those who are in their kind of their herd and whatnot, they will protect them. They will care for them and nurture them and keep them safe from harm. That even like the birds and the bugs have that to those that are in their sort of circle of loved ones. So any being who has at least one object of that kind of caring and nurturing, that shows that even the animals, even the sentient beings in the animal realm, they have that love and that compassion, that wanting these beings to be happy and to be free from suffering. Of course, we all have that. We have that loving compassion, but on a very kind of small, limited scale. It's not extremely vast yet. Maybe we have one person we have that love and affection for, maybe two, maybe three, maybe four. But you can see that it's still very limited, our objects of love and compassion in that way. So we have it, it's just it's not expanded yet to a vast scale. Sentient
탐칠 우대바나 간칸도 등을라 만칸은 이박스 찍박찍증을 해서 그랬어. 근데 나가서 샴바다 냠제데 sentient 탐칠라 잡아서 제탐나 내가서 그 랑전 탐책을 등을도 잘 우대바다 단톡요래 이제 떡성 요랬어.
But what Buddha said is, Lord Buddha said, all sentient beings, they're the same because they all want to be happy and none of them want to suffer. And in that respect, they are all exactly the same. All beings share that same fundamental longing to be happy and that longing not to suffer. And so that love and that compassion then can pervade all sentient beings. That's what Buddha taught. That it encompasses and includes self and all other sentient beings, that longing to be free from suffering and to have happiness.
Tingi tama so nyameng kari chekure zina tanga so tongpo ngaram so nyang gasa to modela ta ta rongsen yo les. Na tata para cha chere tong to sta ko les. Eni rongsen ge chokpo eni para no machine kan sang ma eni tamata senjen tam chela dina chapji aso sang tam tamna. rongsen ge na so nikap dam thar tu ge dunghar tam che sa. Nikap dam thar tu ge dewa tam che tukun jong yo les. That nyasti yaksu tarizi tata nga to tiz kabe kapo yori ena tistanga ti lamsha drop is.
And so that's why the practice of kind of growing and cultivating our compassion and our love is starting, of course, with the focal points of those that it's easiest for us to feel affection and caring for, those objects of our love and affection, and then expanding out to include more in that, more sentient beings. in that sentiment of wanting them to be happy and to be free from suffering. And you can gradually expand from your closest circle of the dearest objects of your love and affection to those in your, surrounding, your friends, your loved ones, those, who you know, those who you don't know, until you eventually encompass all sentient beings, all infinite sentient beings in that sentiment and that feeling of wishing for them to be happy and to be free from suffering. And even though it's difficult at first, and it maybe takes a little bit of training and work, but eventually we can get there. That's the path, that's the starting point. So then we just expand on that.
가서 침성직이나 침성으로나 머나요 가지죠. 이게 머나요나 나타나 파마 그래서 그런 저거 어쩌나요나 동포코는 저거 어쩌식다 부식이나 배 가자바테스라 시라식된다 시라 말가나이나 되나 요리 아파서다 요리 안 보되나 요라 가지고 불알간 가지 그런 저거 보모식한 그런 저거 가지고 그런 거 자신이 총화되어 진간 되나 요라 되나 이제 동포 총화되어 시지나다 름지다 오다 정말 그 불에 정말 난다 지고 그래 상태나 상록동 어디니 부트나오데 라다 이제는 정말 정로지 정말 되는지 되는 정성지 되는지 되는 정말 침석지고도 되는지 결국은 침석지도 베이스 찍고 시작했어요. 그러면 제랑 성지 보창을 부트부터 정말 찍고 그랬어요.
Like even just starting with, let's say, a family of 5, the parents, maybe they start with having their favorites, I mean, it's not totally inconceivable that the parents would shower affection and love on one child out of the 5, kind of in particular, like maybe they have the favorite son or the favorite daughter, or maybe the youngest baby in the family, they put more of their love in that kid. So even though they have 5 children, maybe they don't have equal affection for all 5, and that's just how it is sometimes. So even just starting there and starting to cultivate however much you love the one you kind of shower the most with affection, increase that to treat all the kids in the family equally. Like saying to yourself, oh, they're all my children, and so I love them equally, and kind of working on that, cultivating that. What happens is even in your household and the family becomes very happy, and all the kids are happy, and there's harmony in the household.
르스콜동 쪽보 무시바 안가서 레크는 레로 또 정말 다른지 이런 무시바데 살아봐 베르데다 제정들이 런지 정말 지지지 진도나 대체는 코리나 요바 정말 지대박다 그래서 라나 비와 요바 와서 코리 정말 비와 좀 그래서
And then you build on that, you increase, you expand it out. So that's like your starting point. That's like your basic, your original mold or manuscript. And from there, you're copying, you're increasing, you're duplicating into all beings. Like then your circle of friends, and then your circle of neighbors, and your circle of co-workers at workplace. And pretty soon, your heart has expanded to include all beings in it. And then like your whole environment, everyone around you and your entire society experiences you as a positive presence that brings them happiness, and then you experience happiness, and then that just increases goodwill among you and all those who know you.
샴바동 녀지드니까 정정 된가서 정도 동성성나 나름 속의 생각을 등을 몸보도 실로요 자गर 생각을 등을 몸보여 실로요 그래서 다 공립션도 속에는 나름 속 그런 게 생각을 등을 쌓게 그래서 이나 현직 그 샴바동 녀지는 그런 게 생각을 등을 맞아 자 몸보도 생각을 등을 쌓게 그래서
And so meditating like this, cultivating more in love and compassion, and meditating on this will bring about greater love and compassion. Obviously there's a way to do it. There's like a method for how to cultivate and meditate on the love and compassion. Like she said, I'm not going to go into that today because we don't have enough time. But suffice it to say that when you do these practices to increase your love and compassion, this is something that benefits not just your own mind, but it actually does benefit other beings. It actually brings them benefit. And like before we talked about like just meditation alone, that benefits you, your mind. But when you are now on the level of bodhicitta, love and compassion, then that doesn't just benefit your own mind. Of course, it brings you happiness, it benefits your mind, but it also benefits others as well and brings them happiness.
당선 너무 그 생각을 듣는 데서 당연히 다시 유지된 늘지도 인생의 option지가 유지된 늘지도 그건 늘지도는 딱 맞고 넘바선데 있나요라 맨나요라 정말 그냥님지는 저기 그랬어. 넘바선데 있나요 인다 넘바선데가 많이나요. 그래서 정말 내가 상부터 냠님지나 이처럼 그 찬조지다 앞판도가 주스다. 오늘 좀 판그랬어. 생각도 가가 나왔던 말에서 문이 좀 내가 판그랬어.
So anyway, that was what I set out to talk about tonight, which was just these 4 methods through Dharma to ease the suffering of the mind. And I introduced you to these 4 methods. And if you are able to do these 4 methods, you don't have to be a Buddhist to benefit from it. You can be a Buddhist, you don't have to be a Buddhist. Buddhist and non-Buddhist alike, if they apply these 4 methods, they will see palpable benefits in their lives and in their minds. And this is something that is true, and it's not just me saying it, it's actually true. And I encourage everyone to put it to the test and see for yourselves whether it's true or not. It will benefit your mind, and you will see it's not just empty words, it's actually has force of benefit if you practice these 4.
탄용의 라비나 성질도 수신나 다야게 생근이바 지기오래 뜨거들이지 이제 가는 속이요 생근이바 대문진지 탑내더니 생들아 정들다더라 단랑선 단체나 뜨거 판게오래스.
And don't forget how inconceivably and immeasurably powerful your mind is. The mind is the most powerful thing there is. There is nothing more powerful than the mind. The energy and power of the mind is so vast and inconceivable. It's for that reason I was saying, like, Lord Buddha's, all his teachings are really focusing on the mind. Why? Because the mind is the most powerful thing in the universe. There's nothing greater, nothing more powerful than the mind. But first you have to recognize that you have this potential, this power of the mind. And then upon recognizing it, then by working with the mind in this way to unleash its infinite power, then you can bring enormously powerful benefit to yourself and others.
내가 인터넷 청마도 비인사도 위냐서 되니 청마다 판토야가 레알로 투지지지.
Well, that's about it. Everybody's so nicely, carefully listening, and so appreciate that. And I hope my words are of benefit. So thank you all for coming.
아니 이 은하사를 간지가 비투지지. 당한 남진도 나가 비투지지 잠이가 당합샤기오레스. 에나 잠이가디 은하 지금까지 오즈 요리다 이나 가른 것간 말이야. 이제 가른 porque estava chateado este ponto nem estava não de nada de nem tinha ainda estava com a Jung de nem que a gente já de chess de chess
And thank you so much to Vanessa for translating, because usually when I give teachings, I teach in Mandarin, which is okay. I mean, I'm okay at that, but you know, it's still not my father tongue. It's not my birth language, so. It feels really good to just relax and teach in my native tongue, in Tibetan language. I really feel kind of at ease, and so thank you for that, Vanessa.
Yeah, then 정말 그게 제일 땡기고 되는 것 같은데 이런 거 비추셔야 돼요. 뭐가 뭐는 책임 되는 사람 가지고 내 말씀 좀 듣는 데스.
And thank you, everyone. And so we'll dedicate the merit from today's gathering on page 37. The middle of the page, dedication of merit.
다른 책 나야. 님은 그 댄스를 다른 한편에 무술 지지야 요지. 아침에 정말 뭐서 그냥 되네 가운데 뭐고 이제 배차가 가운데 되네 기초 뭐고 또는 되네 그런 거 주스 금방 그빨 고성적으로 정을 했어. 안도도 또 나서 당선되는다. 나한테 뭐그 추구스도 되나 남자이라. 또 판비치는 일금분들은 그게 디스는보다는 스텝도 난 거는 롱탄신들은 대라지요레스 대라지요레스 그開放되는데 샤표가 아야 너 동에 대한 참마토라 따야 그랬어요. 너무 렘메드 따야 인생 되나 그것은 뭐 지금 그 이송하나 근도 그냥 근도 나한테 총그 범칙 그랬어요. 저런 저 공모시에 보고 말했어. 그러면 그 침내 된다고 토산 저잖아. 침을 땡겼어. 그처럼 살았다는 인생.
And I forgot, I have one more thing to offer you and to share with you is some of the disciples really working hard to raise the money and to gather the resources to be able to bring forth this Guru Gugum, this sacred Guru Rinpoche. It's actually a sacred statue that in the prophecies of Guru Rinpoche that it will benefit us, especially in this time when we are afflicted by epidemics and warfare and conflict and famine and all of these troubles that are especially afflicting this world. It's very protective, and it's from the treasure revealing masters, the Tirthams, for prophecy the benefit of this Guru Rinpoche forms. And I would like to offer these to you. And you can keep them. You don't have to understand, or read it, but just put it up high and keep it in your home. It will protect you. It's very, very special. And these two, my two students here, they really worked so hard, tirelessly, gave so much, so generously, making their offerings and making sure to get these to you, to put these together. So it's really due to their generosity. So after we do the dedication, I want to give to all of you these precious Rinpoche. But first we'll do the dedication together.
Sonam daye tamche zikpa nida topne nipi dhamnama prache chan jirga nache ron jukpa tubom sode luwa durvarwa shon bandhagar apama sarda Om